You are, Professor. Great to see you. Thanks so much for coming back to us on TRT World. So the Americans, correct me if I'm wrong, accusing the Chinese of supplying Russia with dual-purpose equipment. In other words, equipment that's not necessarily useful in a war, but can be modified to become some kind of, not necessarily weapon, but a tool that can benefit Russia in terms of its conflict with Ukraine. But why would China support Russia in that war?
Well, because China has a very long-term relationship with Russia, which even goes back to 2001 through the 2014 crisis. And although I think there are some reservations on the Chinese side about the war, some reservations, at the very highest level, the relationship remains firm, strong. If anything, has become stronger through the war. And there are two reasons. One, they don't want to see Putin lose. And B, because if Ukraine were to win, they would see this as a win for the United States, within which they are a long-term competitor. So all the predictions that China would become, distant from Russia through the war, I think have been proven to be incorrect.
When China presents itself on the world stage, it invariably presents itself as being a neutral power, one that doesn't like to get involved in the domestic affairs of others.
Yeah.
It almost kind of indicates its supporters, at least, who we speak to as an international news channel, kind of presents its future as a manifest destiny that it will become the world's only superpower. When they speak to the Americans in private, do you think they tell the Americans everything, or is there a certain amount of secrecy that nobody knows except the very highest people in Chinese politics?
Well, all international politics is secrecy, and nobody always tells the truth in international relations, whichever the country. But I think on the US side, I think they've got a pretty good idea. Their intelligence is not bad, I think they've got a pretty good idea of China's intentions, China's power. And the simple fact is that China has stated time and again that it wants to replace a US-led world order with a new world order within which China will be at the very center. And they've been pursuing this quite openly. I mean, they've not hidden anything from the Americans, no more, I think, than the Americans have hidden from China, that their intentions are to work with China, manage the relationship, put guardrails around the relationship, but nonetheless realize that they're in a long-term competitive relationship. And the trick is, how do you get the balance between the competitive side and the détente side, the cooperative side? And that's what both are working towards at the moment.
Yeah, the competition also, of course, extends to the world of economics. The chair of the, is Janet Yellen the chair of the Fed still, or is it somebody else? Anyway, Janet Yellen. Yeah,
she was.
Yeah, that's right. She was in charge, wasn't she, of the Fed?
Yeah.
So she's been in China saying to the Chinese, please stop over-manufacturing. That's the American opinion. But surely the Chinese need to over-manufacture just to keep their standard of living.
Well, and also to sell all this very high technology which they've been producing in very large amounts over the last 2 to 3 years. EV, the cars, the solar panels, many other things. People have been really taken aback by the speed of Chinese technological development, and they produce it in very large amounts and at very low cost, and most of the stuff they produce is pretty good, and that outcompetes. And this is the problem facing not only the Americans but the EU, probably even more so. It outcompetes at price level, and certainly as good as anything produced in Europe or the United States. And that's what I think this is. If you've got an economy the size of China, which is now technologically efficient, competent, and competitive, how does the EU or EU individual country, how does the United States compete? And that is at the heart of many of the problems facing this relationship, as well as the strategic issues to do with Russia or to do with Taiwan.
Professor, again, thank you, and we look forward to the next time. Michael Cox speaking to us from London.